Janet Gray, look me in the eye, look me in the eye, Janet Gray.
So, how do you feel if you're speaking with somebody and they don't look you in the eye when you're speaking to them? The Competent Communicator Manual states, most likely you doubted that person's interest, honesty or confidence, or felt excluded and ignored. And that's fair enough, because that's in terms of engaging with an audience. Making eye contact is a good thing for engaging. However, it does demonstrate the assumptions that we can make about people's behaviour without really understanding the reasons for that behaviour. In Australia, there's about 1 in 110 people are on the autism spectrum disorder. And this means that they may have difficulties in social interaction, communication and interpreting social cues. They can possibly have restricted or repetitive interests. You hear about the classic case of the people that are fascinated by trains. It's all they can think about. Sorry, and it's often sensory sensitivity, so often very sensitive to things like sound or touch, like being hugged or having clothing that's irritating. And it is a spectrum, so it means that for some people they can be quite disabled by it and may need a lot of help and care to be able to get through, right through to those which is more like the high functioning end of the autism, things like Asperger's. They might be quite intelligent but still have some of these difficulties which may be to various degrees. There's a big variety within the spectrum. And those on the spectrum may have difficulties in maintaining eye contact with others. For some, that can be taught. So for people like my son Mike, who has mild Asperger's, even way before he even had a diagnosis, he was taught by speech therapists at an early age to look people in the eye. And so he was able to overcome that quite easily. But for some, it is much harder than that. It can take a lot longer if they can actually get to do it at all. So Armand Cody is an autistic adult who has a blog, and on that he describes what it was like when he was a child, when adults, well-meaning adults, would force him to look into their eyes when he was speaking to them. And one teacher became so frustrated with him that she forced him in front of the whole class to stare into somebody's eyes. And this is what he said it felt like. Looking into her eyes was one of the most excruciating experiences of my life. It felt exhausting. I felt as if her eyes saw past my eyes and through me. She was seeing into the essence of who I was and knew everything there was to know about me. I was being spiritually molested. Now that's a pretty strong feeling, just from looking into somebody's eyes. But it goes along with some of those sensitivities that I mentioned before. It's a sensitivity with sight and can have very strong feelings. And eventually, many years later, our man, through speech therapy as well, just like my son, but also using glasses as a barrier to build up his resistance, able to overcome the obstacles and look people in the eye. But it was hard and it took a long period of time. And Armand is a very committed individual who spends a lot of his time helping others on the autism spectrum to achieve their potentials. And not everybody is going to have that sort of drive and commitment, or maybe even the opportunity or capability to be able to do that. People on the autism spectrum can have many strengths, things which can be overlooked due to their social difficulties. Things like perseverance and honesty and a strong sense of justice. Sometimes the honesty can get into a little bit of trouble with that. To be very honest. They've also developed highly developed skills in their area of special interest. So consider some of the well-known people who are thought to have been on the autism spectrum, and that includes Isaac Newton, maybe Mozart, and Michelangelo, which was quite surprising, but I guess it takes an extreme amount of dedication to be able to paint the Sistine Chapel. And Albert Einstein. People who would have been quite fascinating to meet. So to recapitulate, yes, in Toastmasters we need to try and look people in the eye when we're talking and engage the audience. But if you meet somebody that doesn't look you in the eye, don't be quick to judge and make assumptions. They may not be shifty or egotistical. Maybe just be a little understanding. And also be aware, right outside the autism spectrum, there's actually quite a few cultures where it's actually not respectful to look people in the eye. So again, it's not jumping to conclusions. But also, just to finishing off, think about the words of 13-year-old Luke Jackson, who has Asperger's, and he wrote a book called Freaks, Geeks and Asperger's Syndrome. And in it he wrote, poor eye contact is seen to be a problem with social interaction. But I beg to disagree. It is only a problem for those who want to be looked at.